What is up, you guys? It is my goal, as well as my guest goal today, to show you how you can begin to share your story with the world and be resilient so you never give up. My question to you, and the questions that you should be asking yourself as you listen in today, is have you ever thought about giving up? Have you thought about even starting but never started? Have you never started? And if these questions inspire you to want to start to share your voice, be resilient, and never give up, then this podcast is for you. Welcome and thank you, everybody, for showing up today. My name is Braiden Belnap. My guest today is Parker Kane, who is a beatboxer and a podcast producer. His talents have been recognized internationally to where he has even been seen in a McDonald's commercial. Welcome to the show, Parker.
Hey, thanks for having me, Braiden. I'm excited.
Of course. So to speak to that, what inspired beatboxing? Not many people, wake up and say, I'm going to be a beatboxer.
You know what? I think it's because it happened when I was a little kid. And I think that's fascinating too. Just if you ask anybody what they're really passionate about or maybe what they enjoyed doing when they were young, they can answer it better as a little kid than they can answer it as an adult, which I think is interesting. But I started when I was 9 years old. So I just saw Justin Timberlake doing it in sync on TV, and I was obsessed. Just a little 9-year-old kid, in the 90s, like I want to be that when I grow up. And so I started beatboxing around the house, and obviously it was trash. And my mom actually would get upset with me because I was just annoying and beatboxing, like trying to beatbox, but really just spitting all over the house. And it didn't sound good, but I ultimately got better. And I think I did naturally kind of have a little bit of a natural ability at it, more than most people. But I would say, I started with that. My mom ended up getting me that concert that I initially saw on a VHS tape. And I would go to the basement and I would watch what Justin Timberlake was doing, and I would try to do it with him. And then I would rewind it and just do it over and over again until I could do everything that Justin Timberlake was doing.
That's amazing. So you're going to drop us a beatbox?
Yeah, I can. Do you want me to put the Prosperous Life in it?
Let's do it.
Okay. And hopefully it doesn't cut out. We'll see. This is the proper prosperous life.
That's amazing, man.
Oh, thank you. Did it cut out?
It cut out a little bit, but honestly, just being able to hear the small amount that I can with these mics, obviously that just means you have a good mic. But you can just see the talent and see the hard work that you've put into it, because not many people can just be like, hey, do you want to drop a beatbox? And then they just all of a sudden create this amazing thing. Not many people can do that.
Appreciate it, man.
Of course. Now, taking it back to, your 9-year-old self that was into beatboxing, I would only assume that you had natural talent, clearly, but I'm sure as you watched Timberlake, I'm sure you watched other videos, you put in the work. Was there any times that you were like, you know what, I want to give up? I want to be done with this.
It's interesting. With beatboxing, I actually don't think so. With most things in my life, yes. But with beatboxing, I don't know what it was in me. I just wanted to prove people wrong. And so every time someone said, oh, you're not good at it, or oh, you sound bad at it, I wanted to get better. If anything, just to prove them wrong, but mostly just because I enjoyed doing it and I wanted to be the greatest at it.
That's amazing. It shows that you truly had that spark, it was something in you that really you wanted, because many people, when they want something, and I put it in quotes, they generally don't want it. And that's why when they're hit with adversity, it's easy to quit.
Yeah. And I think money is a big part of that. I mean, as I said at the top of the podcast, this came to me when I was a little kid, and obviously I wasn't thinking about money. I think a lot of people have a motive of, I want to do this because it'll bring me money. but I didn't care about money with beatboxing. I just liked it and I wanted to be able to do it.
I mean, you're an instrument, you're a walking instrument, and you found the passion of that within you, which is even more extraordinary because it's easy to hear a guitar and be like, wow, that's inspirational. I want to play guitar. But you are the instrument.
Yeah. I don't have a big heavy case.
Exactly. Which is nice. I'm sure when you get up to perform, it's nice to not be carrying this big thing.
Yeah. And it's hard to, I mean, a lot of people get worried that they're going to be compared to others, right? Like a singer, a guitarist. It's really scary. I can say this because I play guitar and sing, but I get terrified to perform that. And I don't really get scared to beatbox, but I kind of have this background feeling of who do they have to compare it to, probably like not very many people. And with beatboxers, it's always very unique styles anyway, just depending on who the individual is. But yeah, it's kind of a superpower and a crutch of mine, if I'm going to be honest, because I know that that's a place I can go to that is safe. So,
of course. To speak to that, do you feel like when you've been hit with adversity, whether that was when you were a child, being young, or to today, where if you're getting stressed, overwhelmed, depressed, you go to a place of beatboxing because it does bring a safe place, peace, love within your life?
yeah, I would say I do that, and just kind of music as a whole. So sometimes, I mean, beatboxing, I always have it with me, so I could just take a walk around my workplace, for example, if it's a rough day, and just let out some beats and walk around, clear my head. But beatboxing in the car, putting on full-on concerts, singing along to songs, like I always kind of go back to music in some way or another.
Music, beats, whatever. Music does create emotion. So it's fair. I mean, that's why people go to it when they're sad, happy, whatever. So it only makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, bringing it to voice, right? You're a podcast producer, social media. You help people with social media, and you're really good at it.
Thank you.
It's scary to share, your message. It's scary to be authentic. And I obviously today I'm on podcast, social media, and I'm grateful for that. But there was a time that I was also scared and that I was shivering and, oh, what should I talk about for my snippet, or what should I talk about when I start my podcast? I feel like I'm going to run out of content. What would you say to the person that's struggling to start sharing their voice? Where can they start sharing their message, their journey, their story?
It's kind of a double-edged sword, but what comes to mind is, and it's kind of a harsh truth too, but to tell them it's not about them, it's about who they can impact. I feel like if you're not showing up, then you're doing the opposite of a favor for everybody else that's not going to see it. But when you do show up, you're doing all those people a favor who are going to see you and be impacted. So if what you're trying to do is with good intention, and if what you're trying to do is going to bring value to people, then what's the harm? You're only going to get good from it. And if there's bad, and if the bad is, you tried something, you didn't like it, or you tried something, you failed, or you tried something, you had a vision and you didn't quite accomplish that vision, you're still going to accomplish so many good things that you otherwise wouldn't if you just didn't do that thing. And so, that's why I said it's a double-edged sword. It will still help you, but it's not, you have to adopt the mindset of it's not about you, it's about who you can impact.
Of course. So when did you start sharing your story? What age were you?
Oh man. Like kind of officially, I would say in 2015. And I don't remember how old I was in 2015. Maybe like 22, 23 years old. It was after I served in LDS mission, and it was after that, and it was when I was in college that I started being a lot more vulnerable with my story.
Fair to say. Where did you start? Was that just talking to friends, families, and strangers? Did you start on social media? Did you start off with a podcast, or how did you start to share your story?
It started actually through challenge, I guess. And this can be kind of a long story, and I don't want to ramble too much about it, but the gist of it is it came in a hard time. So at that time, I was pursuing something in college that I didn't like, and I literally felt like I was being suffocated. Like I was just constantly working towards something that made me feel awful and like I was just not on the right path. At the same time, I had beatboxing, right, and music. But then, when you're talking to, your family or your friends, like, oh, well, this is what I want to do. And you're getting the whole like, well, that's not going to be a financially stable option, like, are you crazy? You got to do something that makes money. And there was this weird shift where everything I was doing was for the intention of making money and doing what everybody was telling me to do. I went to a very dark place and I struggled really bad with depression. And I probably struggled with depression for a long time before that and just never realized it. But I was really getting hit hard with that. To the point, sparing a lot of details and kind of fast forwarding through the details to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. I wanted to end it all, for lack of better words. And I was in this moment where I almost wasn't here anymore. And I said one last prayer. I'm someone who believes in God. And I just had this cross my mind to pray like one last time. What's the freaking point? It's not the typical prayer that people would maybe encourage, but I was complaining. I was angry. I was like, what's the point of even living? What am I going to do? These are the things I want. And you're telling me it's not possible. So what's the point? And I just got this feeling, this inclination to hang on a little bit longer and, something would change. Something better would be around the corner. And literally the night that I was experiencing this is going to sound really funny. It's going from kind of a more emotional state to more of a funny state. But that same night, I had a bunch of friends reach out to me and ask me to go on a late night McDonald's run, right? College, 1:30 in the morning. Hey, let's go hang out and go to McDonald's. And I was just like, okay, I said yes. And that sounds silly, but that was a really big win for me to say yes and to go with them. Because for months, I wasn't hanging out with people. I was saying no to everything, and I was depressed, right? So I said yes. I went with them. At that McDonald's, I had friends encourage me to beatbox for other people that were there. And I beatboxed, and the whole store went quiet, and everybody pulled out their phones. And, I went home that night thinking nothing of it, and going to bed, feeling a little bit better about myself that, okay, something better was around the corner. I could have been not here for that McDonald's run, but instead I do have friends. I do have people that care about me, right? And I said yes to those opportunities. But from that McDonald's experience, I had a video go viral, and the next day from that experience, it was 53,000 views on my friend's Facebook account. And then by the end of the week, it was like over 5 or 6 million views. And today, just on Facebook alone, with all the shares that as much as we could, we tried to look through and see what happened with that and who all shared it and what the actual tally was. And in 2017, I stopped counting because it was over 1 billion views on Facebook, and I couldn't keep up with it anymore. And so that video changed my life. As funny as it sounds that it was a McDonald's trip with my friends, it changed my life. I took that as an answer to my prayer that I am meant to be here. And as weird as my passion might be with making weird noises, it's worth being here. and I can use that as a way to impact other people positively and inspire them. And so that was kind of the motive behind everything from that point on. I switched my major. I was studying nursing at the time. I switched it to study in communications, social media advertising, because if I was going to be at college, I wanted to learn at least the right way to brand myself and pursue maybe a personal brand or build businesses, you know, and through a series of things. Since then, you know, that was I graduated in 2019, but since then, you know, so many opportunities and ups and downs and job changes, and here we are today. So yeah.
You are meant to be here, man. I'm so grateful that I've been able to get to know you over the last couple of months to speak to that.
Well, thank you. You are too, and everybody within reach of our voice right now is too.
Amen to that. Now, was it scary to start to share that story the first time you shared that?
Yes, and I will tell you, for a couple years, it was hard. I couldn't tell the story without crying. I've told it enough times now that I feel a little bit immune to that, but it still hits home every time I share it. I just don't view it as a sad thing anymore. I used to view that as a very sad thing or an embarrassing thing, but the reality is that's like one of the biggest superpowers I have is my story. And I know that it can make me better from here on out, and it can hopefully, you know, pull some people out of their trenches.
That story will pull people out of their trenches. I'm sure it has already. I'm sure the people that you've shared that story with, that vulnerability when you were crying, uncrying, still gives me shivers. And I know anybody that is watching still feels the pain that you went through. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of feedback like that story changed my life, Parker.
Little bit of feedback. You know, everybody will be nice and say they like it, but I have had some, you know, Instagram DMs of like, after being on podcasts like this one, right? I've been on people's podcasts where some of their followers have then messaged me on Instagram or something and just said something like, hey, like, I wanted to pursue art, or I make music, but it doesn't sound like other people's music or like the music that goes viral. And I think I have a way of reaching people that may have weird talents in society that's called weird, you know, but to them it's like totally normal and what they love to do. And those people, you know, they feel sometimes like pursuing what they want to do is not worth it. So what's the point? And it is worth it.
Well, to speak to that so I do believe that I'm capable and gifted. And I don't just believe it, I know it, where I can see where somebody's at and I can see their potential, where a lot of people are just seeing them for where they're at right now. So I'm just naturally a deep thinker. For the longest time, I would be in elementary school, middle school, high school, and people are like, why are you always getting so deep? Why are you always taking it here? And for the longest time, I was like, man, I'm always so misunderstood. And it wasn't until I was okay being misunderstood and pursuing what I was naturally gifted at, which was really just changing people's lives. Wasn't until I was okay being misunderstood by just about everybody that I was okay pursuing what I wanted. You almost have to be okay being misunderstood. Like, that's a weird talent, Parker. You make weird noises with your mouth and you want to do that for a living? Like, right? You have to be misunderstood to really love your life.
Yeah, just embracing, you know, those things that make you, right? And learning to find power in that without needing other people's validation. And money is important, you know, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but the podcasting stuff I do now, I do that for money. I'm not going to hide that. I just I'm trying to pick things in line with what I enjoy doing and with what I really believe in. So,
of course, and to speak to that, you know, I do believe in purpose. I believe you need to be living a purpose-driven life. To me, that encompasses four things: what you're naturally gifted at, what you love, how you can make an impact, and how you can make your money. If you
Yep.
can do that in alignment with each other, you're going to live a good life because you're doing what you love. You're doing what you're already good at, and you're doing what you're willing to work hard at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I fully believe in that too.
Amazing. Now, to jump into this, of course, I mean, I just wanted to see you for you again. I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful that video went viral. And that was a quick answer to a prayer, which a lot of people don't get that quick of an answer and as big of an
No,
answer.
right? Yeah, no, it was a full on light switch. Like somebody just flicked on the light. Um, Literally, I was in a dark place. I said, okay, I'll hang on a little bit longer. And then the light switched on and everything changed. So, and thankfully, we all have really good and bad days. I've never been back to that same level of dark ever again. And I think it's a strength that now I just have more answers than I did back then. And I needed to see it. And I feel like that showed me it because I don't live this life of luxury now, right? Like it's not like that video happened and now my life's all just set out in front of me. It's not like I have millions of dollars and everything's just easy now. It wasn't the be all end all, you know. It showed me that there's purpose and that there's reason and that I should stay and that I should try. And quite honestly, a lot of the success that came from that, it was just like a wave that I was riding as long as I could before I was back to just swimming like everybody else, you know? And quite literally, because when 2020 happened and COVID and everything, like I wasn't speaking at events. I wasn't beatboxing performances anywhere. Like it just went back to normal for me. And I don't think like that light switch was an answer to everything. I think it just showed me what I needed to see to motivate me.
To put you on the right path, to say the least.
Yeah. It was like God, you know, picking me up as a toy and turning me another direction and be like, walk that way. You know, you're walking towards, you know, nursing school and these other things that, you know, they're good things, but it's not what you're supposed to do while you're here.
Of course. And he has the power to do that. And thankfully so, right?
Right. Yep.
Now, your voice and sharing your story, what was it like sharing that? If you don't mind me asking or answering, what was it like sharing that story for the first time?
I don't know if I even could pinpoint the first time I shared it. Do you mean just like officially on stage or like just in general, like talking to my mom or something?
Social media, podcast, on stage, something of that nature, yeah.
Yeah. So the first time definitely would have been on stage because I wasn't quite podcasting yet. And I wasn't on other people's podcasts and I didn't have my podcast just yet. So my first time officially sharing it would have been at a speaking engagement, which I might even think, now that I'm kind of trying to play it back in my head, I think it might have been a TEDx talk, because TEDx talks are a big deal and I didn't want to waste the experience. And I think through a call with my mom, she was like, no, like you should share that. I was in a space of, should I talk about that on stage? Should I talk about that in my TEDx talk? You know, this is a big one. Should I let this opportunity slip or whatever? And she was helping me understand that I should share my story in that talk. So yeah.
Go mom.
Yeah, go mom. And maybe it wasn't a TEDx talk. It was something big deal though. I had a few kind of bigger talks like that in 2016, 2017, where I was really scared and nervous. And it was one of those first ones that I had that I was really nervous for, that my mom was like, yeah, you should share your story.
Amen. That's powerful. So through the process, of course, you spoke on stage, you've gotten on social media, you've gotten on your podcast, and you've shared this story, and I'm sure many, many more stories that are very vulnerable and authentic. And obviously, as you said before, you're sharing the story to impact other people at this point. It's not necessarily sharing for you anymore. But if you were to hold that story within you, sure, you may have already gotten all the insights and you would have seen the impact, but I'm sure seeing the impact that that story makes, it probably allowed you to work through those emotions a lot quicker as well because you recognized the good that it did do. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair to say. And I would just add, I think sharing my story selfishly is a little bit for me because I've gone extensive periods of time without talking about it. And then when I go back to it, I realize, oh my gosh, I forgot that part happened, or that's how it went. Even right now on this podcast, or if I were to listen to a podcast I did a year ago, there's always these little subtle details that, you lose sight of if you're not constantly staying on top of it.
Of course. So now what you know today, how would you structure sharing your voice, sharing your story? Somebody out there has gone through something like you or something similar or just through a hard time. How would you suggest them work on sharing their story today?
First and foremost, I'd say whatever they're most passionate about using, or what is the most comfortable to them. For me, it was via podcasting. That to me is so much more comfortable. I will say a lot of the same things I say on stage right here with you on this podcast, but on stage scares the hell out of me. And right here, I feel totally fine, So there's gonna be ways that people are comfortable. For some people, it's making little blurps of their story for TikTok or Instagram Reels, right? But ultimately, I'm a very big advocate of podcasting. I think most people, it might be scary at first, but I think most people get to a very comfortable state with podcasting, and from their podcasts, they can break that into any other form of content that they would ever need. You can transcribe it for blogs. You can post clips on TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. You could make 12-minute YouTube videos for it. You could turn it into PowerPoint presentations if you wanted to, and you could create your messages for the speaking engagements you will have in the future. Podcasting is just kind of the mothership of content, I think. And I think people are more vulnerable on podcasts. So,
of course, and like you said, looking out to see 1,000 people is a little bit nerve-wracking, man. Looking at one person or sitting by yourself.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they're not there. I mean, you guys have probably heard this before, anyone listening, but just if you get 30 views on something, or 100 views, 150 views on something, we're conditioned to think that was garbage and like it didn't go anywhere and blah blah blah. But most of the venues that I spoke at were like 150 people in attendance, so it's 150 people, still a lot of people, and we tend to fill ourselves with doubt, like that didn't go anywhere, but it actually did. And I'll add this too, just in some times of darkness, like I said, over the years, over COVID, ups and downs, losing jobs, gaining jobs, lots of transitions. There's been a lot of times where I felt very depressed, very down, very unmotivated. But through a podcast like this one, I get restarted a little bit. I get reminded like, okay, this is what I got to do. So even if you're not reaching a lot of people or you feel like it's not doing much, it's good for you just to be consistent and to have something in your life once a week that will kind of refuel you.
Amen to that. Now, going back to that resilience, consistency. Let's say somebody decides, you know what, it's time for me to share my story. It's time for me to be 100% authentic, vulnerable. I'm 100% open of a book on my podcast. They start. and they start to get depressed. They start to get in a place of wanting to give up. How did you overcome that adversity? How did you consistently show up even the times that you didn't want to?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think first and foremost, I had it maybe easier than some people because I was passionate about it. For people, it's really hard to do something if they're not passionate about it. But I would say try to find what you are passionate about with that or in that, just so you know that you're going to like doing it either way, right? That's got to be one of the boxes checked. Also, I revert back to kind of what I said earlier about it's not about you, it's about who you can impact. If you don't show up, who is going to not benefit from that? There's going to be people who need you to show up. They need to hear your message and they're going to be uplifted because of you. So it makes it easier to show up when you know you're doing that to uplift others and to impact others, and not just because you said you were going to do it and you're holding yourself accountable. So those are some of the first bits of advice, I guess, that come to mind.
When you said that, the thought came to mind to me. Gratefully, you did pray, but what if you didn't pray that one last time?
Yeah.
And the one thought that comes to mind to relation to that is, what if you don't show up today? That person will speak to you, Parker. What if you didn't show up today? What if there's young Parker, but a different person that listens to this podcast today? He sees it on social media and he feels called to listen to it. Through hearing your voice, your message, he then or she then decides to not take his or her life. It's like, what if you don't show up today? How will that impact somebody else in the world? What if you don't show up today? How will that impact you 10 years ago? Like you said, you're remembering this story when you talk about it. You're remembering those emotions, and you're so grateful you're here, and you're grateful you transformed. It's easy to see where you were at and what it felt like. So remember that, whoever's listening to this. What if you don't show up today? What if you could impact you 10 years ago?
Yeah. And I think people will realize too, there's community, and there's people who you'd be surprised. I mean, nobody's story is exactly the same, but there are a lot of people who will relate to you. So as, again, with my beatboxing, right? As weird as your passion might be, or as unique as you think your story is, there are people that your story will resonate with, and they'll be able to relate to you, and they'll want to hear more from you. They'll want to talk to you, and you'll realize just how not alone you are. There might be somebody in a completely different state than you that you don't even know, who is living a very similar situation, and you can change their lives and not even know it.
That's powerful. Amen to that 100%. Now, my thought process comes, okay, I know we want to think about other people, but some people are just so stuck up in a dark place that they almost don't even care about themselves, that they almost forget to even think about anybody else. In that state, is there any tools or suggestions that you would have for them, for anybody that is struggling in at that state, where they could begin to climb out of that hole so that they can start to share their message and make the impact that they're truly called to make?
Yeah, honestly, we all have it, at least with what first comes to mind right now. I'm sure there are better answers that I could come up with if I had some time to develop it. But I think our phones, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, there are so many people doing podcasts and stuff that will uplift you. And I think it just starts with consuming the right content. We live in a world of content consumption, and you get what you put in, right? Like if you're only consuming the news, for example, and that's the only thing, regardless of which way you lean, right, you're going to get a lot of negative feelings. But if you consume the news for a little bit of your day to get educated and whatever, and know what's going on in your community. But then you move from that to go to a podcast that you like, or a TV show that makes you laugh. Like it's just about putting positive content in your schedule rather than filling your lives with negative content. Yeah. 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 And it's out there for whatever you want to do, right? Like I'm trying to build my podcast production service. There are YouTube videos out there of other people who have done that exact thing that I am seeking help for, or help from. And I could be watching the news, or I could be watching a Netflix show that goes on for hours and hours and hours and hours, or I could be watching YouTube, learning skills that are going to help me, do what I love to make money. Right. So it just depends on what you're putting in, and obviously the work you put in, but also the content that you consume.
Of course. Now, to speak to all of that and to kind of bring it to surface, I would love, because I feel like a lot of people here, 9 out of 10 times you ask somebody, have you thought about starting a podcast? They say yes. But 1 out of 1,000 times they say they've done it. So I just want to create a little bit of room here in this podcast for anybody that does want to start a podcast on a couple of steps that they could take to get started. If you're willing to share that, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be the first to admit, I didn't just immediately get started. I started wanting to podcast in 2017, and I don't think I launched my podcast until 2019. So there's a 2-year gap where I was just sitting there like, oh yeah, I'd like to have a podcast, but it took me a while to get started. So, and part of that was not knowing what to do. So hopefully some of these tips that I'm about to share will help someone not take 2 years to get started. And we've talked a lot about it throughout this call so far, but just finding what you're passionate about, what that you love to talk about, right? And whatever that is, there's a niche for it. There's going to be people who will listen, okay? And it's going to be the right people, especially the more niche you get. But whatever you're passionate about, zone in on that and figure out what you can talk about, what you like talking about, how it mixes with your story. Are you going to share your story? But then I would say dive into YouTube to learn how. There is no sense, and people are going to really hate me for saying this, but there is no sense in dropping thousands and thousands of dollars on learning how just from someone else who did it. You can Google it, you can YouTube it. I would say, just being in the world of podcasting myself, a little bit of warning would be don't go with the first thing you Googled or the first thing you YouTube, because there's also a lot of crap out there, specifically with microphone choices. You can Google what kind of microphone to get, and the first 10 are probably going to be bad answers unless it's the Shure SM7B, right? Which is the one that everybody has. And so I would research a lot of something just so you can know which one will work best for your situation. Don't just go with the first thing. But yeah, those are some of the first tips. Just know what you want to talk about. I promise you will talk for hours and be never running out of content. So
I would second that. When I first started my podcast, I feel like there's 30 podcasts that I could do. Now we're on I think this is podcast 56.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
So I would second that. When you get nervous, you'll keep talking.
Right. Yeah. And it's about network. If you're an interview podcast like you are, you will also just make constant connections and building a stronger network. And, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not all about the money. You could have so much ROI from this that's not necessarily money, building connections, building a network, changing people's lives sometimes that will come full circle and you'll know that you changed their life. Sometimes you won't. But it's just about showing up, right? And I think that's amazing. 56, 57. I mean, that's, by the way, in the world of podcasting, at least right now, if you post more than 7 episodes consistently, you are in the top 10% of all podcasts out there ever to be published in the entire world. If you post more than 7 episodes, 9, 10, 15 episodes, I mean, you're well into the top 10% of podcasts, which for you is awesome because 56, 57, you're well past that. But anyone listening who wants to get started, if you make it, I mean, just do 2 or 3 months of consistency and you already beat out like everybody else.
Yeah, I think my metric they say is I'm top 10% in the personal development podcast.
See, and that's awesome. That's a saturated, personal development is a pretty saturated category, and you're top 10% because you're showing up, which is awesome.
And like you said, it's consistency. Doesn't mean it's easy, but you do it because you know that there's somebody listening on the other side of this video or the other side of this audio, video, whatever you want to call it, that could change their lives. And obviously ranking is nice. I think we would be lying if we said it wasn't, because that means we're reaching more people. But even if there was just one person that listened to this video, they hear your story and they choose to stay here and they live to build an extraordinary life, this hour and a half was well worth it.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I share a quick story about that? It'll be fast, but this just came to mind. And this is why I say it's important to share, because then you forget about it. I haven't thought about this in a long time. When I was in college and after this, beatbox video went viral from McDonald's, I was out to eat with some friends. Always stuff happens to me when I'm out to eat. People say to be healthy, and I'm like, well, it's when I go out to eat that stuff happens. I'm just kidding. No, but I was out to eat at my favorite Chinese food restaurant, and just with a couple friends. I think my sister was there too. And mid-conversation, mid-eating, there was this random lady that came to the table, and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're Parker Kane. Like, after you're done eating, like, come back over to me and we want to take a picture with you. My daughter loves you." And I was like, what could this even be from, And anyway, I forgot about that. I was going to leave and not talk to her. And that was a crappy move on my part, but I totally forgot. And then she ran up to me as I was leaving and was like, wait. Like, we really wanted to get a picture with you. And she brought over her daughter. I still remember her daughter's name. It was Kiana. They pulled out napkins from her purse, right? And a pen. And they wanted an autograph from me. And they wanted a picture with me. And they were going to literally hang it, with the napkin and picture and everything in a frame. And I was like, what do you guys know me from? Like, this is insane. And she was like, oh, your cover videos on YouTube. My cover videos, just most people don't even know I do this because I don't do it very much, but I sing, I play guitar, I beatbox, and I do these musical song covers where they're not even my songs, they're just popular songs that I'd make my own renditions to. But that's something that I was very discouraged about because no one ever watched. No one ever watched those. Like, those were my covers, and they know me from that. And so I was surprised. And turns out this daughter of hers, who, by the way, was 9 years old, coincidence that I started when I was 9. I think 9 is a magical age. A lot of people find their passions at age 9. But their daughter, who was 9 years old, was in and out of primary children's hospital with, like, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a bone cancer that was literally taking her life from her. She was dying. And one thing that made her super happy every night was in her hospital room watching my YouTube videos. And I am very grateful for that because, like I said earlier, sometimes you get the full circle effect and you get to see the reward. But most of the time you don't know. You just have to you just have to hope that you're hitting those people, you know. But with this specific situation, it came full circle. And that was the one view on my YouTube video, the 2 or 3 views on my YouTube video that nobody's seeing this. Why do I need to do this? Like, it didn't work. It was garbage. Why was I so stupid to do that? Like, I wasted so much time. I spent so much money on this equipment. It's like, well, I made that little girl's world, you know, and I'm thankful to know that, but most of the time we don't know that.
You're going to make me cry, man.
That one's, I don't think about that very often, but this is why it's so good that's going to be on my mind all week, dude. Couple weeks, maybe. Like, and I wouldn't be on my mind if I wasn't on your podcast right now.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. And I'm not going to lie. Again, it's like you said, it's nice to see the rank. It's nice to see the numbers. But it just takes that one person to change their lives.
Yeah. And I can say that Kiana, you know, she is still here. I'm friends with her and her mom on Facebook, and I need to probably, you know, follow up with them, see what's going on in her world. But I think things are good. But who knows, like, what maybe she's been inspired to do now because of that.
How old is she now?
Well, that would have been, I'm bad at math, but she was 9 when it was 2016, 2017, whatever that is now.
I challenge you to reach out after this, man. I think that would be good for you.
Yeah, I will do that.
I love that. Now, to wrap all this, I could talk to you for hours. I mean, there's just there's a light about you, man. There's a way you talk. There's a way that you connect, the way that you speak, that you're a genuine dude, and you can tell that you care and that you want for the best for people. And I'm so grateful that you're still here. So thank you for giving me this hour and a half to be able to make the change and make the impact that we're making today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you too, man. You've helped me out with a lot of calls previous to this podcast. And then I've had a good time on this podcast so far. So yeah.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course. Now you've served me, you've served the world. How can we be of service to you?
Well, quite frankly, just if you know anyone that wants podcasts and needs help, I like specifically helping business owners or people who work in business that has to regularly put out content. I like helping them know how easy it is to have their entire content strategy right out in front of them, as long as they have, you know, a podcast that they film once a week. So, and then I kind of cut all that up into their content that they post. But yeah, just my website, probably parkerkane.co, which is CO. And Kane is with a K. So Parker, KANE.co. But yeah, everything about any links that anyone would want to follow from that, you know, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, it's all going to be there. So
cool. And then obviously I personally follow your Instagram and everything else, but if they want to reach out, is it just Parker Kane, or how can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, parkerkane.co. So it's kind of nice. I did my same Instagram handle and website are literally the same exact thing. Yep.
Hopefully you're okay with me encouraging this, but if you do relate to Parker in any way and you want to start sharing your story, reach out to him on Instagram. I'm sure he'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and I'll help however I can too.
Love that. Now, last question I ask all my guests. What is your definition of a prosperous life?
Is there a really common answer you want me to steer away from?
I want you to speak authentically to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I would say. I wouldn't say that there's a common answer, just because everybody's answer is really different.
Yeah.
Some have been similar, but they're pretty all very authentic.
Okay. Well, I was just going to go with what I think is a theme of this episode today, and that is to show up. If you show up in everything you do or want to do, you will be prosperous. No matter what number shows up in your bank account, no matter how many views you have on that YouTube video or TikTok video, if you know what you're passionate about, if you are moving forward with good intentions, and if you are sharing your story and just being yourself and putting yourself out there in the world and showing up, you will live prosperous. And you'll never know probably how many people you impacted because of it. But one thing's for sure, I'm glad I'm still here. There's a lot of people I've probably touched who I don't even know about over the last few years that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't here. And so for anyone, you know, who wants to live a prosperous life, but for anyone also who just feels like they're in a hole they can't get out of, you have to show up. You have to at least make that move. Otherwise, nothing else will come.
It's powerful. Thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you for showing up for the world and, you know, being here. I really do appreciate it, Parker.
Yeah. And you for showing up, you know, doing your podcast, and for people, you know, showing up, choosing to listen to something positive and uplifting for their entertainment today, or their commute to work, or whatever they're doing while they're listening to this.
Of course. Now, do you have any last words for me? Because I benefit, but the audience as well.
I honestly think those are good last words for me to end on, because I think that's really been the theme of this episode. And I would just say to keep up. There's always something around the corner. And, you know, as a country radio DJ right now, one of the songs I heard today was "Every Storm Runs Out of Rain." And yeah, every storm will run out of rain. There's always a time and a season. There's always negative. There's always positive. And we just got to push on through.
Love it. Thank you so much again. And thank you, everybody, for showing up today, truly. With that in mind, if you are somebody that's ready to start living a prosperous life, ready to take your life to the next level, go to braidenbelnap.com, or I'll link it below, and join us in the Prosperous Life membership. I'll coach you weekly so you can begin to live the prosperous life, so you can be true to yourself. You can start to create the vision you want for life. You can live your purpose and ultimately make an impact on one person or many. With that in mind, have a wonderful rest of your day and share this with somebody that could benefit. Have a good day, everybody.